Like I've said before, it's such a versatile instrument, you can do a whole lot on it. And I decided I was finally comfortable, 20 years later, comfortable enough with the top end, maybe only 15 years later. That's a very good question, and I don't exactly know the answer because I've thought about it a little bit, and what I do when I do a lot of recordings, and I have through the years, where I'll hear the music of the artist, the singer, songwriter, or whoever, or it could be instrumental, but I'll hear it, and I react to that just internally. I don't really have an intellectual idea. I don't have a plan, and so it could be that someone else can look at what I've done and say, oh, when this happens, he always plays the stick. But in fact, I don't know it. I just listen to the music there, and I think, oh, I know this, I can feel this thing I could do on the stick or on the upright or with the funk fingers, and that would really work well with this piece. And that's what makes me decide. So as with many questions, I'm the last guy to know the answer to that. Yes, my stick playing has changed through the years and is still, I think, changing. In fact, before I met you, I was upstairs practicing, coming up with hopefully some ideas that in the next few years I'll be able to incorporate into my playing. Like I've said before, it's such a versatile instrument, you can do a whole lot on it. So at first, thinking back to 1976, when I first played the instrument with Peter Gabriel, I played very simple parts. I had to work hard to control the instrument in a loud rock context on stage. In those days, the pickup was very, very hot and picked up other sound on stage, and the hardest thing I had to do was to dampen the strings. I'm better at it now. They are dampened, but I had to dampen them extra, and that changed with the second stick I got, and through the years I started playing the guitar parts sometimes with the bass part. You can kind of use the top end as part of the bass part if you want. And then I think pretty early, when I had it in the early 80s, I joined King Crimson and was playing parts that very simple guitar parts on the top side and simple bass parts on the bottom, and I found it really was well suited for that. In subsequent years, I found a few techniques on bass with volume pedal and with swells and with some effect pedals to get a little bit different approach on the bass side of the stick. And I guess by the time I made the album Stickman, I decided I was finally comfortable, 20 years later, comfortable enough with the top end, maybe only 15 years later, to do an album based on the stick, but not live. A lot of stick players, my hat's off to them, they play everything live in one take, and I didn't intend to do that at all. It was a studio album, so I did it with overdubs and really just stretched my repertoire to composing pieces on the stick and then doing them in a standard recording technique the best I could. And that, I was happy with the way the album came out. Of course, I couldn't play it live with just a drummer, and so I then set about thinking, well, maybe there should be a group called Stickmen, not Stickman, and get another stick player or a touch guitar player and start out by playing that repertoire, which is what we did, and that was, I don't know, 10 years ago. So we've done a lot of albums and a lot of repertoire since then, and it's a very challenging and satisfying part of my musical life to be with Stickmen. Often I get asked to play the stick, often not half the time, but many albums, someone who hasn't heard it or hasn't seen it says, I'd like to stick on this. The full story is often they don't know what the stick is. Sometimes they might have heard me play the NS upright, which is an electric upright, and they saw me on stage with Peter Gabriel and heard that sound, and it sort of looks stick-like. So I really, I wouldn't say it's a process that's always the same, but if someone asks me to play the stick, I still want to go with what I heard for that music. But if they're correct and a stick part in my style does work with the music, I'm happy to do that. It's just kind of funny and ironic that sometimes it's not at all that. It's a ballad that wants an upright part. And the whole process of making a good record with an artist whose music it is and who's very close to their music. The whole process is is a funny organic thing of working with them to get not my part and not their part, but the best bass functional part that can work the best for their music. So I'm happy to take suggestions. Sometimes it'll actually send me in a direction I'd rather not be in, and sometimes that works out better than I thought it would, and sometimes after a while of working against myself, I have to say to them, you know what, I really would maybe I would rather try the stick than the bass. But it's a satisfying project when you're working just to get the best music, and I'm not really married to how it comes out, whether in the end it's a bass or a stick or their part or my part. It's just what's best for their music. I think different bands probably would do it different ways. With Stickmen, we've been doing it a long time, and so we're used to it. And let me add that Pat Mastelotto, the drummer, doesn't just play acoustic drums. He has samples, including samples of stick parts and samples off the record. And at any time, if we find we can't play something, we can either say, hey, can you play an E here? Or he might just throw it in whether we want it or not. So really, it's three guys doing that. And I would say we don't have a set plan of how to attack it. I think it has a lot to do with the composition of the piece. If I make up the piece at home and alone in my studio with maybe multiple stick parts, and then I'll send it to Marcus Reuter, the other touch guitar player in the band, and he might replace something I did, he might improve it, he might do some completely different thing. And we first, generally, our process is we work on the album and getting that as good as it can be musically. Then later, sometimes 6 months later, we get together to rehearse to play that music live, and we have to make a new plan, because if there are many parts, I know, for instance, if there's a power guitar part, I'll always double my part. And I can't do that live, so that's one example where you have to compromise and find something you can do live to simulate what you want it to do, and sometimes, as has happened currently with some of our new music, our new album is called Prog Noir. It has pretty complex pieces that have a lot of parts. And sometimes maybe I played bass and Marcus played chords, but for one reason or another, I'll say live, let me play the chords and you play bass, because it's just going to save me a pedal change or a sound change that I can't make. And he often asks me to do the same. So we don't have a plan. It's a flowing situation, and we are used to it after all these years and all these tours and tackling new music.